Think about the last election you watched. The ads, the debates, the polling, the money, the spin, the endless analysis of who said what and what it meant and who it helped. Now strip all of that away. No television, no internet, no political parties, no voting booths, no written laws, no currency to buy influence with. Just a group of humans, somewhere between 20 and 150 of them, trying to figure out who should make the decisions that keep everyone alive. How did they do it? How did leadership work before all the machinery of modern politics existed? And what does the answer reveal about the kind of leaders we were actually built to follow? The answers are not what most people expect, and some of them are deeply uncomfortable for what they imply about the leaders we have today. Let's go. Start with the most important thing to understand about ancient human leadership. It was not what we picture when we hear the word leader. We picture a chief, a king, someone at the top of a hierarchy who issues commands and everyone obeys, someone whose power flows from their position. Ancient human bands did not work like that. The evidence from anthropology, archaeology, and the study of modern hunter-gatherer societies is remarkably consistent on this point. For most of human prehistory, for the vast majority of the 300,000 years our species has existed, human groups were largely egalitarian, radically so by modern standards. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent decades studying this. His research across hundreds of hunter-gatherer societies past and present produced a striking conclusion. These societies actively and aggressively resisted the emergence of dominant individuals, not passively, actively. If someone started acting like they were in charge, started hoarding resources, giving orders, expecting deference, the group would respond. First with ridicule, mocking the person who was getting too big for themselves, making fun of their pretensions, bringing them back down to earth through humor. Then with criticism, direct, public, communal criticism, everyone in the group joining to call out the behavior. Then with disobedience, simply refusing to follow, withdrawing cooperation, and if none of that worked, ostracism, exile from the group, which in the ancient world was effectively a death sentence. Boehm called this the reverse dominance hierarchy. Instead of the powerful dominating the weak, the many dominated the potentially powerful. Leadership was kept flat not by ideology, but by constant active social enforcement. This is not a romantic vision of ancient egalitarianism. It was not paradise. There was still conflict, still violence, still inequality in various forms. But the specific form of inequality we associate with political power, one person commanding many, was largely absent. And its absence was not accidental. It was maintained deliberately. So if ancient humans did not have chiefs, or kings or presidents, who actually made decisions? Who led? The answer is, it depended entirely on the situation, and this is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Ancient human groups practiced what anthropologists call situational leadership. Different people took the lead in different circumstances based on who actually had relevant knowledge and skill. Who knows where the water source is on the far side of the valley? That person leads the group when the drought comes. Who has tracked this particular animal species for 30 years? That person leads the hunt. Who has seen this kind of sickness before and knows which plants treat it? That person leads when someone falls ill. Who has navigated conflict between groups before without it turning into killing? That person leads when tensions rise with neighboring bands. No single person held all of these roles. No single person needed to. The group drew on whoever had the most relevant expertise for each specific challenge as it arose. And crucially, taking the lead in one situation did not give you authority in others. The best hunter did not automatically get to make decisions about where the group camped or how disputes were resolved. Leadership was specific, contextual, earned fresh in each new situation. Now here is something remarkable about how this worked in practice. Modern research on small group dynamics shows that this ancient approach was actually highly effective, much more effective than we might assume. Studies of decision-making in small groups consistently find that groups with rotating situational leadership, where whoever has the most relevant knowledge speaks up and is listened to, outperform groups with fixed hierarchical leaders on complex tasks. The wisdom of the group, accessed through whoever knows most about the specific problem at hand, produces better outcomes than the authority of a single designated leader, applying general judgment to specific problems they may not fully understand. Your ancient ancestors were running what modern management theory calls a dynamic leadership model, and they were doing it without reading a single business book. But here is where the story gets more complicated, because while ancient groups resisted permanent dominant leaders, they absolutely did recognize certain individuals as special, as worthy of particular attention and deference, just not in the way we might expect. The qualities that earned someone elevated status in ancient human groups were not the qualities we typically associate with leadership today. Physical dominance, size, strength, aggression. These were not the primary path to influence in most hunter-gatherer societies. A physically powerful person who tried to use that power to dominate others would be met with exactly the kind of active group resistance Boehm documented. What actually earned elevated status? Generosity. Consistently sharing more than you took, distributing resources rather than hoarding them, being the person who made sure everyone ate before eating yourself. Skill. Genuine demonstrated competence in things that mattered to the group, not claimed expertise, not credentials, actual skill visibly applied in real situations with real stakes. Knowledge. Memory of where resources were located, what worked in past crises, what the land could provide in different seasons. The person who remembered things the group needed to know held real informal power. Conflict resolution ability. The capacity to de-escalate tensions, find compromises, make peace between parties in dispute without making enemies of either side. This was extraordinarily valuable and extraordinarily rare. Generosity of spirit, not just sharing material resources, but emotional availability. Listening, being present when others were struggling, making people feel seen and valued. Notice what is absent from that list. Notice what did not earn you influence in an ancient human band. Wealth. There was almost no accumulated wealth in hunter-gatherer societies. What you could not carry, you could not keep. Birth. Who your parents were did not automatically transfer status to you. Status had to be earned afresh in each generation. Violence. Someone who used violence to compel compliance was exactly the kind of person the group's anti-dominance mechanisms were designed to neutralize. Rhetoric. The ability to speak compellingly about yourself or your vision was not sufficient on its own. What you actually did, how you actually behaved, whether your words matched your actions. The group saw all of this in intimate proximity every single day. You could not fake it. Now here's the part that should make you sit very still for a moment. Take the qualities that actually earned influence in ancient human groups: generosity, demonstrated skill, genuine knowledge, conflict resolution, emotional availability, consistent integrity between words and actions. Now take the qualities that tend to propel people to leadership in modern democracies and large organizations. The overlap is not large. Researchers who study what is called the Dark Triad of personality, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, have consistently found that these traits are overrepresented among people who reach positions of power in large hierarchical organizations, not because organizations want leaders with these traits, but because these traits are useful for the specific mechanics of climbing hierarchical systems: self-promotion, manipulation of perception, willingness to do what others find uncomfortable, strategic ruthlessness. In a band of 150 people who see you every day, these traits are instantly visible and immediately sanctioned. You cannot maintain a false reputation in a group that small. The gap between what you claim to be and what you are gets noticed immediately. In a system of millions of voters who see you only through screens and campaigns, these traits can be hidden, managed, packaged, and sold as their opposites. Narcissism as confidence, Machiavellianism as strategic thinking, psychopathic fearlessness as strength. Your brain, built to evaluate leaders in groups of 150, is being asked to evaluate leaders in systems of millions. It does not have the right tools for the job. And the people best at exploiting that mismatch are often exactly the people your ancient instincts are worst at identifying correctly. This is not a cynical observation. It is a structural one. The problem is not that people are foolish or easily manipulated, though both of these things are sometimes true. The problem is that the cognitive hardware for evaluating leaders was calibrated for an environment radically different from the one we now inhabit. Now let us talk about something that is almost never discussed in conversations about ancient leadership: the role of women. Because the assumption, almost universal in popular depictions of ancient human social life, is that leadership was male. Chiefs were men. Decision-makers were men. Women were peripheral. The archaeological and anthropological evidence tells a more complicated story. In societies with no accumulated wealth to pass down, in societies where physical dominance was actively suppressed, the specific advantages that tend to concentrate power in men in stratified societies were largely absent. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies show that women participate actively in group decision-making. In many documented cases, women's opinion on matters affecting the whole group, where to move, whether to engage in conflict with another group, how to resolve internal disputes, carries significant weight. There is evidence from some archaeological sites of women buried with objects suggesting high status, women in ancient shamanic roles, women as the keepers of specific knowledge traditions. The rigid gender hierarchy we associate with human leadership throughout most of recorded history appears to be a product of agriculture and the accumulated wealth and property it created, not an expression of something ancient and inevitable about human nature. Before agriculture, before property, before inheritance, the picture was more varied and more equal than we tend to assume. Now let us come to what I think is the most important part of this story, and it is the part with the most direct relevance to your life right now. Ancient humans had a deeply sophisticated mechanism for checking whether their leaders were worthy of the influence they held. And that mechanism was not elections or term limits or separation of powers. It was proximity. In a band of 150 people, everyone knew everything about everyone. There was no privacy in the modern sense. Your behavior in moments of plenty and moments of scarcity, in moments of danger and moments of safety, in moments when you thought no one was watching, all of it was visible. A person who claimed to be generous but quietly kept more than their share, everyone knew. A person who claimed to be skilled but consistently made poor decisions, everyone saw. A person who claimed to speak for the group but consistently made choices that benefited themselves, everyone noticed. The accountability mechanism was not institutional. It was social and relentless. Leadership had to be earned continuously in the full view of people who knew you completely. That is a standard that essentially no modern leader is ever held to. And the gap between that standard and the accountability systems we actually have, elections every few years, where information is filtered through media and campaigns and spin, is one of the defining structural problems of modern political life. We evolved to follow leaders we know. We are trying to govern ourselves with leaders we will never meet. And that gap between the intimate accountability of the ancient band and the managed distance of modern political systems is something worth sitting with for a very long time. Because the question it raises is not who should lead. The question it raises is what conditions produce leaders worthy of being followed. And the ancient answer to that question is both simpler and harder than anything modern political theory has come up with. Be genuinely skilled at things that matter. Share more than you take. Tell the truth, especially when it costs you something. Resolve conflict rather than creating it. Be the same person in private that you present in public. Do all of that, consistently, in full view of people who know you well and have no obligation to tolerate you if you stop. That was the ancient standard for leadership. It was demanding and unforgiving, and it worked extraordinarily well for the vast majority of human history. We have built systems of extraordinary complexity to try to replicate what proximity and transparency provided naturally. And those systems, for all their ingenuity, have never quite managed it. The ancient humans sitting around a fire, watching each other, knowing each other completely, and following whoever actually deserved to be followed. They had something we have not yet figured out how to replace. And the gap is showing.